Okay, sorry about that. I got a phone call, so I have to start this video again for this part. I'm going to start with the question. If the ratio of type O to non-type O donors is 37 to 43, how many donors would be type O out of 300 donors? So you can see I highlight the important information. They're comparing type O to non-type O donors, and then they want to know how many will be type O if there's 300 in total. So 300 is a total number. So they gave us a lot of information. So we're going to break it down little by little just to make sure you guys understand. First of all, they gave us a comparison, type O to non-type O. So first of all, we're comparing type O and non-type O. Whenever you talk about ratios and you see the word to, that is represented with a colon in math for ratios. If you look right here, we have a colon. So type O to non-type O is represented by these numbers. So type O is 37. Why do I know that type O is 37? Because it was introduced first. So since it was introduced first, that relates to 37. And then the word 2 is the colon, 2, 43. So non-type O is represented by the number 43. And then you're putting a colon. So they're comparing type O to non-type O. So we have 37 type O to 43 non-type O. If you look at the question, they want to know how many donors would be type O. So I still want to know type O out of 300 donors. That's a total. So for our answer, we need to know the comparison of type O to total. And we know that the total is 300, so I could put 300 there. And they want to know how many would be type O. So that's the question. So that means that that's what I don't know. That's my unknown. And remember, your unknown is represented by a variable, x. So here is where the problem lies. They started off with a type O and non-type O description, but they want us to end with a type O and a total number. So you realize that these categories are not the same. What is the one thing I said is important with proportions? Categories must be side to side, must be the same. Fahrenheit to Fahrenheit, hours to hours. Right here I have cups to cups, people to people. So if you set up your proportion, you can realize, okay, I'm gonna have type O next to type O, but this is non-type O and this is a total. So what I'm missing is, I'm missing a total for this first situation right here. I need to get a total. And what you need to do is you need to think critically. If 37 are type O and 43 are not type O, which makes sense. If 37 are type O, then everybody else is not type O. So if 37 are type O and 43 are non-type O, how can I get a total from that? I know that 37 were type O and 43 were non-type O. So in order to get a total, all you have to do is actually add those two numbers. And that will give you a total of how many were originally part of the first setup. So if you have 7 plus 3, that gives you 10. Carry the 1. 3 and 4 gives you 7 plus 1 gives you 80. So using the original information, I was able to figure out that my total was originally 80. And what do I need to end with? Go back to the question. They're comparing type O to total. So that means I need a type O right here. So we're getting our original information. We originally had 80 and type O. How many were type O? 37. So as you can see, they gave you an incomplete table. They give you incomplete information because they wanted you to personally figure it out. So now I can ignore this because what I want is for categories next to each other to be the same. So I have a type O and a type O, and I have a total and a total. Now the next thing is that you're probably wondering, wait, this setup is different from a fraction, which is okay. You can turn this easily into a fraction. Just pretend that this is the fraction bar. Just pretend that that's the fraction bar. So you can see that you have 37 out of 80 is equal to x over 300. And remember, the bottom 80 and 300 represent your total. So that makes sense because both of them are the same category. And then 37 and x represents type O. So that makes sense because they're both the same category. So we have set up our proportion now. We have 37 over 80 equals x over 300. So we can cross multiply. 80 times x gives you 80x. And that is equal to 37 times 300. And that gives you a little trick, ignore the zeros. So you actually have 37 times 3. That gives you 1, 2, that gives you 111. And then you could just add the 2 zeros that you originally ignored from the 300. So we have 80x is equal to 11,100. So what's your next step? Your next step is remember to divide the number that is attached to the x. So here's another little trick when you're dividing. You have a 0 and a 0. 1 0 from the top can cancel 1 0 from the bottom. That's another little trick. So technically what I have is 1110 divided by 8. And if I put that in a calculator really fast, that's going to give you 1,110 divided by 8 gives you. So we have x is equal to 138.75. So here's the problem. This is talking about people. This is a decimal. A decimal means part of. Can you have 0.75 of a person? Can you have a part of a person? No. So what we're gonna do is we're usually gonna round up just to give us an estimate. So if you round up, the 7 makes that become a 9. So it's gonna be about approximately 139 what? Type O donors. So this one was a little tricky because there's a lot of information, but once you figure out the proportion, everything was the same. You knew that you had to cross multiply and then divide, and that gave you about approximately, out of the 300, 139 were type O.